In his early 50s, Hans Smedema lived the stable life of a successful Dutch engineer and executive. His daily routine was completely ordered, and his professional standing was entirely secure. Then, in March 2000, that reality shattered. His memories returned as vivid, intrusive flashbacks of a 1972 trauma in Utrecht. He recalled his wife being drugged and sexually abused by her landlord, and he remembered being subjected to a forced medical procedure that left him infertile. Hans went to his family and his wife, expecting to find the missing pieces of their shared tragedy. Instead, he met a wall of total denial. Everyone he spoke to insisted that these events had never happened. When Hans presented these detailed recollections to the medical system, the response was swift. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with delusional disorder and a paranoid psychotic state, effectively framing his memories as symptoms of a mental illness. By January 2004, the impact of that diagnosis was no longer abstract. Hans was officially declared fully disabled, a designation that ended his career as a high-level headhunter, earning €145,000 a year. Smedema is either suffering a profound mental collapse, or he has awakened from 28 years of induced amnesia designed to cover up a crime against the state. As Hans tried to reconstruct the 30-year void in his memory, he developed a specific theory for its cause. He alleges that he and his wife were systematically drugged with daily, low doses of ketamine to induce continuous memory loss and maintain their vulnerability. He also claims he was subjected to clandestine electroshock conditioning. He believes these sessions were performed every 5 to 6 years to forcefully suppress any surfacing memories of the initial 1972 abuse. Hans took these charges to the police, but the justice system refused to act. He claims that high-ranking officials at the Ministry of Justice specifically forbade detectives from creating official reports, ensuring that his allegations would never reach a courtroom. If these allegations are true, it represents a crime that is self-erasing. By destroying the victim's memories through drugs and conditioning, the perpetrators remove the only evidence that a violation ever occurred. The most significant challenge to Hans's crusade doesn't come from a government file. It comes directly from his wife, Wies, the woman he claims was the primary victim of the conspiracy. In an attempt to force the truth into the public record, Hans published a book titled Vechten tegen het onbekende, where he detailed his claims of state-sponsored abuse and long-term drugging. When his wife read the account, she responded with absolute denials. In the margins of the book and in letters, she wrote the phrase nooit gebeurd, Dutch for never happened. Medical boards and state authorities use these specific handwritten notes as conclusive evidence. To them, her categorical rejection of his claims proves that Hans is trapped in an elaborate delusion. This creates a diagnostic stalemate. Hans is caught in a loop where his own testimony is dismissed as madness because it is contradicted by a spouse who claims to have no memory of the events. Hans has attempted to break this stalemate by using clinical psychology to deconstruct the state's position. He argues that his wife's denials are not evidence of his insanity, but a symptom of her own trauma. He bases this on the theory of structural dissociation. This model suggests that when an individual faces severe, inescapable trauma, the mind protects itself by splitting the personality into separate parts. One part is the apparently normal personality, which functions in daily life and manages work and relationships. This part is designed to be entirely amnesic to the trauma, so the individual can continue to survive. The memories are held by a separate emotional personality. Because of a phenomenon called inter-identity amnesia, the functioning part of the mind has no conscious access to the records held by the traumatized part. Using this framework, Hans argues that his wife's annotations are not proof of a lie. They are the phobic, self-protective response of a mind that has been clinically segmented to bury an unbearable history. Hans has uncovered physical evidence that challenges his psychiatric diagnosis. Medical records from a urologist in 2006 confirmed a 7-centimeter scar and a physical gap in his vas deferens, details that match his recovered memories of a 1972 sterilization. Despite this physical evidence, the medical and legal establishment remains unmoved. Because Hans carries the label of delusional, his physical proof is treated as a coincidence or a misunderstanding by an unreliable narrator. This has resulted in a cordon sanitaire, a systemic legal blockade. Hans reports that hundreds of lawyers have refused to represent him because his official psychiatric diagnosis makes his claims legally impossible to litigate. The psychiatric label becomes a tool of disenfranchisement. Once a person is classified as delusional by the state, they lose the legal standing required to challenge the very institutions that labeled them. Today, Hans Smedema lives in exile in Spain. He remains trapped in a system that refuses to investigate his evidence, leaving him as a man without a recognized history in his own country. This creates a self-correcting loop within the bureaucracy. When a medical diagnosis identifies a complainant as delusional, it provides a legal justification for police and prosecutors to ignore their testimony without ever launching an investigation. The objective truth of what happened in 1972 remains inaccessible. The horror of Smedema's experience is the absolute inability to validate his own reality to a world that has already decided he cannot perceive it. In the end, isolation is the ultimate consequence. Whether the mind is shattered by an external conspiracy or by its own internal defenses, the tragic result is a truth that exists only in a room where no one else is listening.